The views and opinions expressed on this program do not reflect the company, owners, management, staff, clients, or partners.
It's Friday, the 16th day of July, 2021. Welcome to the Daily Hour, brought to you by Medical House, One Communications, and Linda's. I'm Jamal Hartman, along with Michaela Ian, Sherry Vanderpool, as well as Leanna Lambert, who will be with us in a quick bit to give you the latest in her news break. Ladies, before we get started, how are you both doing today?
Good, Sherry.
I'm doing well. I can't complain. You know, it's been a lot going on this week and everything else. I don't want to confuse my people with this being St. George's. So let me put that out there first. It's still, my hair is red. This is red. I mean, this is blue. And this is Cleveland County. I thought we was going to be on the same accord at one point, but I guess we're not. You know, go Cleveland. Rest in peace, Pluke. This is going to be a great, funny game. Mm-hmm. What happened, Michaela? Did I say something
that was just a lot?
Yeah. I mean, all that Somerset red blue stuff. How you doing? It's Friday, Kales. Your favorite day of the week or what?
It is, and I'm in a good mood. I'm like, yes, let's go. Let's do it. Let's bring on the weekend. Let's have a good time. Let's keep this sunny weather going. Yeah, we're feeling it today.
Well,
love to hear Michaela.
Thank you.
She's doing her thing. Friday used to be my favorite day of the week, but it's not anymore. I love coming on here and engaging with the audience. So I miss you all weekends. Did I suck up enough?
Oh.
I sucked up enough. Folks, just want to let you know, we will be having the premiere on in about 5 minutes. The show will be airing only on YouTube only. So we are on all platforms right now, but if you would love to catch the conversation with the premiere in the next few minutes, you want to go over there. While the conversation, the focus is on the economy. We aren't gonna, if you have questions about other things and we have time, we will get to your questions. Leanna's gonna come in and read the news about. Let's see if Leanna's ready. She's got her flats colors today, folks. Lee, good morning.
The disrespect from Sherry, but it's okay. It is okay. I want you to know there is no misconception on who I am representing tomorrow.
Well, she's just doing the saucy dogs from Flats against St. David's, and if I had to choose a team out of those two, I'm going for Flats too, and then Willis Bay will just beat them and take the cup.
Oh my gosh!
I'm sorry,
He was doing so well.
I'm sorry,
he was.
But Lee, let's get to the news break. And after the news break, like I said, we will be switching from all other platforms. If you want to watch, it'll be on YouTube only. If you want to listen, you can download the app available on Android and Apple devices for BCG Radio, where you can hear it. Lee, over to you.
Thanks, Jamal, Michaela, and Sherry. TGIF to everyone that is tuned in with us this morning, both locally and abroad. We finally made it to the end of the week. I hope everyone is having a great start to their day. I'm Leanna Lambert, and it's time for the Daily Hour news break. So here's what's going on in today's top stories. Fire crews, along with Belco personnel, were called to a report after a motorist was trapped in a vehicle that was surrounded by live electrical wires yesterday. Bus driver Mark Anderson, who is very well known to the community, saw his life flash before his eyes after an electric pole was snagged by a passing truck and crashed onto his car at 1:30 p.m. on North Shore Road near Volcrossens Crescent in Pembroke. A delivery truck is said to have been making a turn off the main road when it got entangled in a wire and broke the pole. Now, emergency services managed to remove the vehicle from the downed pole, which caused an outage that left 575 customers in the dark. Belco rerouted power to get electricity back to 415 customers, with 160 still without power by 5 p.m. as work continued to replace the pole. Now, Shelley Lehman, Belco Managing Director of Transmission, Distribution, and Retail, said that if you ever come across a downed power line, which can pose extreme danger, always assume the line is energized and dangerous and stay at least 35 feet away. She also gave a few tips, saying never run from a falling line, as this may cause your legs to bridge current from a higher to lower voltage and you may receive a shock. Now, instead, she says to keep your legs together and shuffle away to a safe distance from the line with both feet on the ground. In other news, Sophia Cannonier and husband Michael Watson appeared in magistrate's court yesterday on charges of breaching the government's COVID-19 quarantine regulations. Ms. Cannonier, who's 52, and Mr. Watson, who is 46, both denied charges of refusing to comply with a mandatory quarantine as directed by a health officer and failing to complete a travel authorization form. The pair, who appeared via Zoom from their Devonshire home, pleaded not guilty to both charges, which alleged to have happened on Sunday after they returned from a trip to the UK. Senior Magistrate Juan Wolf adjourned the case until August 16th and released the defendants on $3,000 bail each. He ordered them to stay at their residence until they received a negative day 8 COVID-19 test. Meanwhile, the island's law enforcement are to get a digital policing boost as upgrades are to be made in digital forensics and cybercrime investigation. Now, this is just one of the priorities for a new 5-year plan, which was unveiled for the service at a press conference yesterday. Switching from paper to electronic documents, upgrading CCTV, replacing body cameras, and adding dash cams to vehicles are among improvements planned. Now, Police Commissioner Stephen Corbishley said that the public would see a greater level of visibility, attentiveness, and getting it right the first time. He acknowledged that budgeting had to factor in the new 2021 to 2026 strategic and operational plan. And the late confirmation of cup match has left the St. George's Cricket Club facing a financial shortfall with sponsors and no television coverage for the event. The executive committee of the club yesterday thanked lead sponsor HSBC Bermuda and the Bermuda government for their support of the event, but said that they had seen a marked lack of support in plot bookings and corporate sponsorship this year. Now, the committee also said that this year's classic might not be broadcast on local television, unlike past years. In a statement, the cricket club said that this is not a situation that the St. George's Cricket Club has any control over and appealed for any group with the capacity to broadcast the event to get in contact with them immediately. Turning to today's weather, we have a high near 84 and a low near 77 degrees. Today, we'll see a mix of sun and cloud with a chance of an early shower. It is a fine summer day ahead as a high gradually builds back up over the area during the next couple of days, hurdling a return to largely fine, dry, and sunny weather into the weekend. Typical summer warmth and humidity will prevail. That's all for our daily hour news break. But before I go, we are excited to see the return of one of our biggest cultural events, the Eastern County Cricket, and we are wishing the mighty Flats Victoria and St. David's the very best of luck in tomorrow's first match. Let's head back to Jamal, Michaela, and Sherry in the studio for today's Daily Focus.
All right, Lee, we have to run, but if anyone wants to see you, they'll see you this weekend at Eastern Counties. All the best to both teams, as you stated, and we'll see you next week. Have a great weekend.
Hey, guys, have a good weekend.
All right.
Bye.
A quick break, and for those still watching on other platforms, you'll need to go onto YouTube or BCG Radio. We'll be right back with the Premier of Bermuda, the Honorable David Burt. Do not go anywhere. Trust me.
Mom's celebrating her 70th birthday next month. Have you noticed her age is catching up with her?
Yeah. Plus, she's having a hard time getting up and around like she's used to. I would sure hate to see her fall.
At Medical House Limited, we can help make life situations easier. We have electric beds, motorized scooters, bath stools, walkers, you name it.
Mom's been real good to us. We'll get her birthday and Christmas gifts from Medical House.
Medical House has relocated next to the Dandy Town Field, number 6 Bakery Lane, Pembroke. Telephone 292-3622.
John Barrett & Son, Bermuda's favorite distributor of fine beverages, has brought us a new and refreshing thirst quencher just in time for the approaching warm weather. Hint Water in 7 luscious flavors. Hint Water is slaking the thirst of active people who need pure hydration, low on the glycemic index, and want the kind of taste experience that keeps them coming back to try the next flavor. For those who've been giving water a miss, Hint may win you over. Hint Water. No sugar, no additives, all flavor. Lindo's. Why go anyplace else?
Alrighty, welcome back to the big show. She's Michaela and she's Sherry Vanderpool. I'm Jamal Hartman. Thanks again to Medical House One Communications, Lindo's, our friends over at Channel 82, where you can watch this and many other locally produced shows as well. We do have the premiere coming up, but before we bring the premiere in, I just want to, just so you can understand the direction of this conversation, I'm going to share a little clip, which will just give you an idea of the first question that we would love an answer to from the premiere today. Here we go.
You're the Minister of Tourism. Let me finish with this last question. How is it tonight you can announce that Southampton Princess, which has been closed all this time, has no staff, is open at the lowest rate for this mandatory hoax, right? Who's doing the housekeeping when they're closed? How did that happen? And is it true that Princess is now looking to reopen without the massive development? Because contrary to popular opinion, no matter what, you're the Minister of Tourism, and we still don't have heads and bears.
I'll try to answer the questions.
Please.
And the way that I'll answer it is this. My approach to this job and my family and my colleagues and everyone know that I work extremely hard, and most nights I go to bed at 2 or 3 a.m. after working. All of my cabinet colleagues have received those messages. The CMO, others get the emails from me at 2 and 3 a.m. And so persons may wish to question my work ethic if they want, but I think that it will be very difficult in which to do so. So let me just leave and park that there. On the issue of, you've asked a question and I'm answering the question. On the issue of heads in beds, I know that you arrived late, but I did speak about tourism inside of my remarks.
I heard you.
Thank you. I spoke about tourism in my remarks, and I have said that some hotels are seeing hotel occupancy at levels equaling 2019. So we are without question making progress in that regard. And we're making progress on that regard because people recognize, know, and understand that Bermuda is a safe place to visit and a safe place to travel. And people want to vacation in a place where they know that they can feel safe and enjoy. And so that is the record that this government has.
How could Southampton Princess be open when they're formally closed? Who's doing the housekeeping? How did that happen? I'm done. That's my specific question.
All righty. Mr. Premier, welcome to the Daily Hour. I believe you're on mute, sir.
Good morning. How are you?
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for coming on. And I think that clip's important to share because the Fairmont Southampton closed temporarily for renovations in September of 2020. And, you know, Ciola is a well-respected and experienced journalist. And she asked the clear question, what's the status of that hotel? Has construction begun? is it on schedule to reopen on time? And when I say on time, using the timeline that was presented last fall, when it was announced that it would be temporarily closing. So the question that I'm going to repeat is what she asked, which is part of the question that was not answered. And what is the status of the hotel?
Well, Jamel, I would just disagree with you that she asked a very clear question. She asked about housekeeping, and at my level, I don't get stuck in those responsibilities on the specifics. Thankfully, someone from the union did send me a WhatsApp afterwards and say they have staff that are retained there to assist with various things such as housekeeping, and the hotel that's not open for guests is open insofar as the work that is going on there, the preparation of the model rooms, getting things ready for the development. So from that perspective, I could say that's the answer to that one. Who's doing the housekeeping? It's the unionized staff who are still remaining there and will be able to work to assist. In regards to redevelopment, that question's been asked a number of times, and the Minister of Finance and myself have given the consistent answer that we are working with GenCon to secure the funding for the redevelopment of the hotel. And that process must continue. It is a challenging one to certainly raise money in these particular environments, but they have a very ambitious plan. We did tour the property, I want to say maybe it was about a month ago, with myself, the Minister of Finance, and also MP Crystal Caesar, where we toured some model rooms with a prospective lender of the property. And so they are continuing to work through their process of getting their funding in place. The one thing the government's going to ensure is that we have a fully funded project before we go ahead and get started, because we've seen challenges that happens when you don't have fully funded projects such as Morgan's Point, and then you run into difficulties, and then either the taxpayer or someone else is left to bail out at the end. So that's the status of the Fairmont Southampton. They anticipate that they would like to get their construction started at the latter half of this year, and the government is continuing to work with them to get the financing in place.
Thank you for that. It's almost as if we've heard this before, and I'm going to be very personal with being in the Bermuda Tourism Authority. When I was an employee there, we went and toured the site, which I believe it was going to be what's that resort that's on the Marriott, not St. Regis, the one up Morgan's Point. We went to view that, and everyone was excited. Premier, they were like, "Oh, this is a well-needed hotel property coming to Bermuda," and the miserable old man that I may be said, "This same thing happened in flats down at Palmetto Bay years ago." I think that's what it was called. Right? I'm like, it doesn't work like this, folks. And this is not to be a negative Nancy. I think that's what they're called. But, everything you just said, I took in. But we've been told these stories for years and years and years. Yes, we've had the Lauren open. We've had St. Regis open recently. But the PLP government built a place where they were you want to call it low-cost housing. You have this Bermudiana Beach Resort, it's called now, that's scheduled to open 2022, and everything that you kind of just said just now, and even what happened with, we'll say it happened under the OBA with Morgan's Point, it almost seems like every time we look, we're being promised something, but then there's no funds being available to do it. We've heard this with the Michael Douglas property down South Shore, right? I know these are private properties, but it's like these billionaires come in, they're looking for money, and then nothing happens. Why are we supposed to have confidence in the words that you and your government speak as it relates to these new developments? Yes, St. Regis happened. And if we're being honest, I mean, that was developed under the One Bermuda Alliance, that private project. What can we be confident that will come from your leadership and your government? Because we've heard this all before, sir.
Well, I'm not entirely certain if I will agree with the premise of where you're coming from. But here's what I would say, is that it is important to have a fully funded project. We could start on construction development in Fairmont, Southampton, and we can end up with a situation Morgan's Point. I am grateful to have a Minister of Finance who understands finance very well. We did not support the project at Morgan's Point. We're in opposition because we did not think that it was structured well. And you have to learn from your experience, and you have to learn from history, and you have to say this is not a mistake that we're going to get ourselves into again. And so from the perspective of Fairmont, Southampton, there was a funding agreement that was in place pre-pandemic. We were pleased with that agreement. Everything was in place, but things change after, you have an episode like this where tourism markets are rattled, where lending markets are rattled, et cetera. So you have to go back and start again. That's the process of which is going through. Is it ideal? Absolutely not. Fairmont Southampton is a important and critical project. But what I would say is that the the developers and the owners are committed to getting it done. They certainly do not want their investment in which they made to sit there empty and spending money while it's not progressing. And so I think it's important to recognize that if you don't have a fully funded project, you could end up with a Morgan's Point, to the thing of which you were talking about in Flex, where you start with the best intentions and then you don't get to the best intentions. On the issue of Bermuda Beach, it goes to a similar thing. We have learned from experience, and the importance is to make sure that you get the planning right when you start. We could have started before, and what happens if you run out of money or you get to a certain place? Those are the challenges that exist, and what we've committed to do is to making sure we get it right so we don't have to go back.
Okay. I want to change gears, and audience, we're going to get to as many audience questions as possible. Obviously, thankful the Premier has given us more time. We have more time with the Premier than normal. We're not ignoring you. And obviously the girls will be asking questions as well. The ladies will be asking questions. Yeah, I'm not hugging the Premier to myself. I don't want you all to think they're just standing by. One last question, Premier. Just want to switch gears. According to various sources, the G7, and for those, the G7 is Canada, France, Italy, Japan, the United Kingdom, and the United States. The G7 has now agreed on a global minimum tax of 15%, right? They proposed how it might be distributed. The former finance minister for the One Bermuda Alliance, Bob Richards, in the RG the other day, is very concerned by this. Can you speak about how this is likely to impact Bermuda?
We don't know how it will impact Bermuda at this point in time. Certainly the G7 had came up with their views. The G20 may opine, if they haven't opined yet, but where this comes from is it's what's called the inclusive framework of the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development, the OECD. The inclusive framework continues to meet. Bermuda is involved in the inclusive framework, as is, I think, 137 other countries that are involved inside the inclusive framework, and we'll continue to work through that process. I think it's an interesting proposal, which got new impetus from President Joe Biden, but it remains to be seen what it actually will be structured and how it will actually look. The fact is that when you are trying to apply a one-size-fits-all model to all countries around the world, that certainly causes a challenge, and those are the concerns that the Bermuda government has raised. So we don't know what the final result will look like. We continue to engage, as it's called, at the technical level, understanding the technical details so that we can better assess what impact, if any, it will have on the way in which we do business here in Bermuda. But that's not going to stop the government's perspective of making sure that after the pandemic, and certainly as we're talking about moving beyond the pandemic, that we deal with the issues of fairness here locally. And I think that with what's happening on the global scale, it's also a great segue to speak about the fact that we have to make sure that we're dealing with tax reform here locally. And making sure that the burden of those persons who make less is continued to be further reduced, as we were doing for the last few years. And I think that's the most important thing that the government is focused on, that there may be a broader level tax reform that may be required for the international taxation system, but we also have to recognize that locally, when we're dealing with things such as living wage, et cetera, it's a question of how expensive are things and whether or not you can change your tax structure to make sure that the pressure is released on those persons who are making less.
Alrighty.
Good morning, Mr. Premier. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Sherry. I'm missing your red.
He claims it's her hair, but whatever.
No, it is my hair, but thank you very much. Love your tie. When we talk about jobs in Bermuda, we want to look at what is the latest with fintech and how many jobs is created in Bermuda for Bermudians.
I don't have the latest figures. I know that we reported that that I want to say last year we had about 60 jobs in fintech. I know that there are new companies that are setting up all the time. And I think that what's important is to recognize that these jobs that are going to come to Bermuda are compliance jobs. And that's why when we look at the work that is being done for the Ministry of Labor, where they are focused on training and development, where there is any single person in Bermuda at any point in time can get trained and upgrade their skills, whether it be the Department of Workforce Development, the various bursaries that are offered, the work that's taking place at Bermuda College. And so far, especially when we're talking about compliance, because that's one of the main things, a lot of the jobs that will come in fintech in Bermuda are going to be compliance jobs, making sure that the AML, the KYC stuff is done, checking on the new persons who are coming, who are opening accounts with our fintech companies. So if we can just take an example of a company called Bitrex. Bitrex set up last year. They are a cryptocurrency exchange. They hired more persons, but they have 4 Bermudians work at their office. If we take a look at the company called Stable House, they have, I don't know the exact number of Bermudians of which they have working in their office. We saw Circle is setting up, and they've already started to put out the advertisements for roles that will be available from the Bermuda-based operations as they are required. And we have other companies such as Cross Tower. I think it's 10 licensed entities, and all licensed entities must have persons and bodies on the ground. So I think what we're looking at is that we were before 3 years ago where there were no jobs, and now there's over 60 jobs in Bermuda that are based inside of fintech. There's a mix between persons who are on work permits and persons who are here locally. But as those jobs continue to build out, there's going to be more and more local hiring. So I'm excited about what's going to come with fintech. I know that one of the things I think I spoke about yesterday is that people will look for the quick wins. I certainly want quick wins, but recognizing that this industry is going to be built for the long haul. A company like Circle that has taken 2 years to make sure they flush out their strategy to get it right is something that's important. And now they're going public with a $4.3 billion valuation. They have the money to invest and to stick for the long haul. And those are the type of companies that we want here in Bermuda.
Okay. Binance, which you signed a MOU with in 2018 on behalf of Bermuda, has become under scrutiny. Just yesterday, Italy came out against the company saying that they authorized to operate in the jurisdiction. This follows on the heels of others such as Thailand, Japan, Germany, and the US have also targeted Binance in recent months. Why should Bermudians be confident that the MOUs are going to benefit Bermuda with so much uncertainty and some of the companies involved?
Well, we've seen that a lot of those MOUs that were signed early haven't panned out, and that's part of learning on this job. So one of the things now is that the government of Bermuda does not actually, me personally, I don't do MOUs or photo ops or anyone with people who have not gone through the licensing process of BMA. Because the licensing process of the BMA ensures that the companies are meeting the required standards. Binance was engaged in that process. I'm not entirely certain if they're still engaged in that process. There are other companies that are engaged in that process. And after the licenses are awarded by the BMA, who are the entities that are there to scrutinize these entities? We will then do what is necessary and assist the company with promotions here in Bermuda. So that's the way in which we've changed. And as I said, in this job, you learn and you adjust. Binance is a massive company. Binance would have been in Bermuda in the early days, going through the regulatory processes if they could get banking to work here. And so they international operations, which they wanted to set up, the guy who was here actually went to Jersey and set them up there because they can have banking access. And we recognize that banking is something that is always a challenge. And that's why when we discuss about moving beyond the pandemic and we discuss about the Bermuda government's economic recovery plan, one of the important things which we have in there is the manifestation of one of our platform pledges, which is the work on the Bermuda Digital Bank, which can make sure that we are supplying the banking services, providing competition in the banking market, but also providing the banking services that will not hinder companies from setting up in the future. We have limited banking services that are available on the island. I do not begrudge the existing banks for their caution because they are serving international industries and international companies and us here in the island. And if they lose their correspondent banking relationships, then we will have difficulty transacting globally. So it's a challenge that we have, but other companies don't have. Other countries don't have that challenge because other countries have multiple banks and different banks that have different risk appetites, so they can hold these kind of companies. But we do know that we have more banks that are coming to the island that are going through the process of Bermuda Monetary Authority, and the government is continuing on this Bermuda Digital Bank initiative, which we received the final business plan proposal, I want to say 2 weeks ago, and that will just be reviewed, and then we'll take to the cabinet and announce the next steps in the House of Assembly when we come back in November.
Thank you, Mr. Premier. As we mentioned earlier, the St. Regis is obviously Bermuda's newest hotel, which was agreed upon under the last government, 58. So can you tell us what capital projects the PLP government have coming down the pipeline that will inject life into our economy and that offer Bermudians employment and entrepreneurship opportunities?
I think there's capital projects that are taking place all around the country. If you see, we're digging up roads left, right, and center. And I think one of the most important things to do when we're talking about infrastructure projects is that we have to make sure we build our infrastructure for the future. I mean, we recognize that in some places we're still, not treating our waste properly and appropriately. And so if you look at the economic recovery plan, one of the main items in there when it speaks about infrastructure investments, it speaks about upgrading the wastewater, the water and waste treatment facilities. So if you're looking in the East End, down there in St. George's, how we're actually, that's the starting project where we're, piping things underwater from the south side water treatment plants and making sure that we're doing correct water, sewage, water and waste treatment, which is particularly important. If you look also, one of the infrastructure projects which are going to be important is making infrastructure for electric vehicles around the country and making sure that we start on that process. We're now ordering electric buses, and now we have to match that with a electronic charging infrastructure that takes place throughout the country. And then you can look at the developments which we're doing insofar as solar energy. Those are important things which make sure that they will employ persons. On larger scale capital projects, there is going to be the potential refurbishment of the Tynes Bay wastewater waste treatment facility, which is something that is important and part of the economic recovery plan, because it's vital that we're able to protect, make sure that we can continue to turn our solid waste in the country into energy and not have to landfill it and do those things require. But when we're talking about large capital projects, the largest one without question is going to be the Fairmont Southampton redevelopment. Work needs to happen to restart or to salvage what was left at Morgan's Point. But the Minister of Finance is going through a careful and methodical process to make sure we get it right. And as I've said, that we are blessed to have a Minister of Finance that understands these things and is not going to pull the trigger before the time is right. We're going to get it right so we can have fully funded projects that are in place.
Thank you. So I just want to kind of switch gears just a little bit. So I think everyone would agree that the cost of living in Bermuda right now is very high. So in a recent article in the Royal Gazette, Zach Monis-Lindos explained what's behind the rising cost of groceries. Bermudians are struggling. So what's your government's plan to assist in this regard?
Well, the assistance in regard for food prices is a very difficult one. And the reason why is that Bermuda, we do not manufacture our own food. And a lot of those items have to be imported. And so when we're looking at the global recovery right now, the economic recovery, what we're seeing is inflation that is spiking in the United States. It's spiking in other places, and that will trickle into inflation here. And a lot of that, unfortunately, has to do with food and the attendant costs that come inside of food. But if we look at the economic recovery plan, there's 31 points which were laid out in our economic recovery plan, and anyone can go online to gov.bm/economic recovery to read the plan for themselves, to listen to the Minister of Finance and to understand what's in there. The economic recovery plan focuses on what is necessary and required for long-term sustainability of our economy. And it speaks specifically to issues of the cost of living. It speaks specifically to the matters of what we have laid out is the creation of a food cooperative. So a lot of times people saying, well, in Bermuda, you want to see healthy, but healthy food is expensive. One of the things that we have been criticized for, but we're going to certainly push forward ahead, is a vertical farming facility where we can produce leafy greens at a lower cost than what they are currently being produced for and being sold for now. You're gone? Bye. See you later.
Hi, Ed. Well, when you talk about vertical farming, we had Chris Faraya from Agri Living Institute last week, and he is not a proponent of vertical farming. He says it's actually much better to farm the way that we farm, because vertical farming is very expensive. We don't have that sort of renewable energy, so it just doesn't make sense in a grand scheme of things, right?
Well, that would be his opinion. I didn't watch it, but what I can tell you is that we've done the analysis
on this, and the size of the facility which we're looking for, the fact that we have ample sunlight, and if you're going with a low energy facility, you can make it work. And we're not going to put forward something that's not going to work. Bye, Princess.
Hi, Nia.
See, I'm normally on drop-off duty, so they're going to camp with
I get it. Jobby pops in every now and then.
And so from a vertical farming perspective, we've done the figures and we understand that we can provide it less. Now, I'm not going to say that someone who is in traditional farming is going to support what it is that we're doing. But we have to understand and recognize if we want to continue to do what it is that we're doing right now, we're going to have the same result. And governments have to make difficult decisions in order to make things work, okay? Difficult decisions in order to make things work. And so from that perspective, I know that other people may have a difference of opinion, but we've done the numbers. And if I can deliver leafy greens for 2/3 of what they're costing right now, that is a benefit to the country and that's a benefit to society. The other thing of which we're talking about when we speak about capital projects, and one of the things that's here, it's not a big capital project, but it is a matter of infrastructure development. And it's also something that certain people will oppose here in Bermuda because people have their structures which work well currently right now, but may not be working for the total society. And that is the shoreside facility, which we've been speaking about since the 2000s in order to process fish and to jumpstart a fishing industry, a bigger fishing industry in Bermuda that we can provide local needs and then export needs. And so from that perspective, I think that we can have better cost of living if we do more items, if we grow and develop more things here in Bermuda for sustainability.
Thank you. So prior to the pandemic, I just want to go back just a little bit before everything was COVID. There was another divisive topic around healthcare and health insurance. So can you let us know what's the latest? Is the government still planning on moving forward with their healthcare plan?
Unquestionably, the government will move forward with the healthcare plan. If we look at the economic recovery plan, which I always refer to because I was said that we were going to be discussing about moving beyond the pandemic, so I'm very well briefed on the items inside of our economic recovery plan. There were two things specifically dealing with healthcare inside the economic recovery plan. One of them was the reduction of prices inside of prescription drugs. And it says work with pharmacists, hospitals, and physicians to reduce costs of medications. That was actually passed in the House of Assembly, I want to say in February, where we are setting up what's called a national drug formulary, where we'll be able to regulate the prices of certain prescription drugs. I think it's the top 20 prescription drugs. And that is something that went through a significant round of consultation. So that has been delivered. The next thing is to introduce the Bermuda Health Plan, assuring access to affordable universal health care for all, and designed with technology at its core to maximize efficiencies and data-driven care. The integrated model will allow public and private sectors to work together to reduce Bermuda's healthcare spend. Now, unfortunately, as we know, the Ministry of Health has been fully engaged in the management of the pandemic. And one of the things that's important why the government, and we set out in the national address in April to move beyond the pandemic, is so that we can get away from the day-to-day management of the pandemic and get ourselves to a place where we can focus on the other issues which are particularly important to the Bermudian people. And they want action on healthcare. And so the work has continued in the background with the teams. The Bermuda Hospitals Board is working along with the Ministry of Health on the integrated health model. The cabinet did have a presentation on that, I want to say, a month ago. We're continuing to work. They've given feedback on those items. They've given feedback, and what we want to do is to roll out an integrated model which will do healthcare differently. We have lots of different drivers and a part of healthcare costs in Bermuda, and we have to deconstruct those costs and find a way that we can deliver efficient healthcare in Bermuda that can be affordable to everyone. And the integrated model is a way of doing it. When we say integrated model, it means that healthcare is actually delivered differently than it is right now, and that is going to upset some people. But at the end, you have to focus on what is your goal. Your goal is the reduction of healthcare spend in the country while maintaining the quality of care which we have. And I do not believe that there is anyone who believes that we cannot do healthcare more efficiently in this country. So the one before what we're doing, we're just focusing on healthcare financing. On this, some of the criticism was, well, you're just dealing with financing, but you're not dealing with how healthcare is implemented. What we're now doing, take a step back. We've got the financing part. We understand where we're going there. Now we're going to present it as a total package with the reform of healthcare financing, also with the reform of healthcare delivery.
So when can we expect to see that online? Just because I know there are so many people who are uninsured on this island because of the cost of healthcare, and I'm sure that they have exorbitant hospital bills with the amount of people who've been sick from COVID. So when can we expect to see something like this in reality?
Universal healthcare is not something that I'm going to say is going to be delivered in the next 1 or 2 years. It's going to take a while. So there's an entire plan that rolls out on there. But I think when you're talking about the stepping stones, one of the things we'll talk about is the government health insurance plans, which we currently have, and to make those ones better because those ones are more affordable. So right now, for instance, the health insurance plan HIP does not have a prescription drug benefit. Can you add a prescription drug benefit to those type of programs to make sure that persons can able to have access to basic and basic healthcare insurance? Those are the things which the government is looking at to fill the gap, and you'll be hearing about those. I want to say we possibly bring it to the House in September.
All righty. Here's the exciting part of the show, Premier. Now we're going to go to the audience. And what I'm going to ask is that you keep your answers as concise as possible so that we can engage as many people as possible. I'm going to ask this question, although you kind of answered it, but Peter Smith is asking, we've been in the pandemic for 18 months. When will the economic recovery plan start? Can you just go ahead? Sorry.
Absolutely. The economic recovery plan has started. If we go online, if you go to gov.bm/economic recovery, and you read the 31 main points of the economic recovery plan, you'll see that some of them already been completed. They speak about for instance, they speak about the economic investment certificate. Those are some things in there. And as I said, there are 31 various items in there. Many of them are underway. Some of them are nearing completion. Some of them are complete. So we're certainly pressing on in those issues. So there are ministries that are involved in management of the pandemic on the day-to-day basis. And then there are ministries that don't have much to do with management of the pandemics who can focus on this work. But the government of Bermuda spent time developing an economic recovery plan. And that is the focus of our work, delivering on the things that were laid out in the government's economic recovery plan.
Alrighty. Terry K, she's asking, and are they encouraging private insurance companies to allow children to insure their aging parents?
I'm not entirely certain what she's speaking up in that regard. So I would struggle to answer that. I'm sorry.
Alrighty. Terry, if you can add clarity, we'll happily ask again. Elrita Wade, she's asking, why doesn't government give some subsistence to people to start growing their own food? Can lead to a healthier lifestyle. It gets people outside, vitamin D, they get exercise and know what they are eating.
I will tell Ms. Wade to certainly stay tuned. One of the things inside of our election manifesto was speaking about increase of domestic food production, the planting of fruit trees on the roadside and throughout the country, and also continuing to boost domestic food production. And so I think she should stay tuned to announcements from the Ministry of Home Affairs in that exact regard of which she's speaking about.
All right, folks, I'm going to try to get through as many questions as possible. Keep them coming, comments, questions, keep them short. I'm asking the Premier to keep his answers short so that we can get to as many people as possible. Richard Olson, Michaela.
What can be done to get the MJ and casino business going? Shouldn't we have a casino in the city, possibly government owned?
There are some persons who believe that we should have a government-owned casino. There's others who do not. The government right now is taking the position that we're supporting the St. Regis and to make sure that we get casino gaming a reality. We had a meeting with the banks earlier this week. And again, the issue, just like with fintech and other companies, is the issue of banking. And it's a very delicate balance for our existing banks because they are nervous about the impact that it could have on their correspondent banking relationships. MJ?
I'm not sure. I don't know what he meant by MJ.
Is that Mary Jane? I don't know.
Maybe.
Well, we passed the cannabis bill in the House of Assembly. However, the opposition and the governor or senators opposed it, and it was turned back for a year. So we will go ahead and bring that back next year, February, and then it can work. It's unfortunate. It's one of the things that's laid out in the government's economic recovery plan. But in that case, I think that politics won. And so people may like the bill, people may not like the bill, but the fact is that the bill was structured so that we can meet our international commitments of fitting a regulated cannabis market inside of global norms. And so from that perspective, we're going to try to move that ahead again this year, but unfortunately it was turned back in the Senate. Jamel, why are you making up your face like that?
No, because I'm trying to remember, and I honestly, I'm not gonna come at you because I don't remember, but I'm like, I remember something in that bill that I didn't agree with, and a lot of people didn't.
There's lots of things. Hold on a second. There's lots of things in the bill that people may have agreed with and may not have agreed with. You will have that anytime when you have bills that are this thick. You'll be easily able to find and pick a point. But what the government has to do is they have to balance all interests. Our most important thing in that bill was making sure that we designed a bill that got the governor's signature. That's what's important. And there are international conventions around cannabis that we cannot ignore. And so from that perspective, it was a regulated cannabis market. It had to be a regulated cannabis market. It did allow people to grow. It did allow people to possess it, allowed all that type of stuff. But what we have to recognize is where there's people who are saying we should just let it all go, that would not get the governor's signature.
So for clarity, it was in convention with the United Nations?
It was designed to earn the governor's signature along the basis of complying with the international norms that exist. And that was the way that it was structured.
But see, Mr. Premier, I understand that now you've said it. But this is part, and we haven't talked about it.
Jamel, if I could just say something, that was explained clearly before the debate, during the debate, and after the debate. What happens is some people just would prefer to focus on the noise versus the communication that the government is making on that issue.
No, I feel like if people are not understanding it, it's because the government is not communicating it as effectively or efficiently as they think they are.
Right, and that's what I was going to say. Thank you, Michaela, because I'm saying that it's okay. It was explained before, during, and after, Mr. Premier. But as you know, look, let's be honest. You're where you are based on popularity. That's how politics works, right? And once you get to that position because people vote for you, it's your job to communicate with them in the most layman term possible, in every possible outlet and way possible. So to be as if like, oh well, we explained this. I'm gonna be honest. Not by my choice, but I try to keep up as much as possible. Just preparing for this show, I've been researching and watching video and doing this and that, right? So, and I don't even have time for that, but I found the time. So we can't expect that because we feel like we've put it out there that everyone's going to be there. With that said, I just think it would be, very gracious of your government, especially, and I'm not saying you, but your government as a whole, to really relook at the approach that they're taking when it comes to communicating certain information. Because there are people, for instance, who are not watching this show, who are not listening to this show, right? That aren't going to understand what we just understood. And that's all I'm saying. It's just think about that, and it will probably make things a lot easier. And I want to go to the question, Sherry.
What is the intention of regeneration, aka gentrification, of the Court Street and the plans of the proposed hotel?
Not entirely certain about plans for proposed hotel, but we have released a Northeast Hamilton Northeast Hamilton development plan. I think that's out for consultation. Everyone can go ahead and take a look at it. It's online. The Minister of Home Affairs did a press conference on that in North Hamilton last week. I know there's going to be a set of community meetings to review the draft North East Hamilton plan, and persons from the community are welcome to comment on that. So it will go to the House of Assembly after the comment period. So that will either be in September or November, and then those plans can begin in earnest.
Alrighty. Sean Smith asking, what are some low-hanging fruit that government can do to increase its revenues without introducing new or increasing taxes?
The best way to increase revenues is economic growth, and that's where the government is focused. That's why we are dealing with the economic recovery plan and focus on the economic recovery plan. I believe that Bermudians are overtaxed, and the Minister of Finance believes that Bermudians are overtaxed, and we do not want to add existing taxes to persons who are already here. What we want to do is to grow the pie, to make sure there's more economic activity. I can speak to things that we wanted to put forward, such as cannabis and others, which would have increased government revenues, but that will have to be deferred until next year. But the most important thing is economic growth. You don't want to, I would say, tax people who are already here, who are paying taxes on everything, because Bermuda is an incredibly overtaxed society. And that's why I bristle at persons who label Bermuda as a tax haven and other types of things like that, where I say there's no one in Bermuda, whether they be whatever sphere they are, who believe that we are a country that is undertaxed.
All right. Let's take it back a bit. So outside of maybe Zane De Silva, not many PLP politicians own businesses or have at least 10 employees. Why should businesses, the business community, and Bermudians trust those with no skin in the game to get it right for them?
Well, I think that is a loaded and unfair question, Jamel, because I think what we have to understand is the base of politics is policy setting. That is what politicians do. Politicians should not be operating government departments. Politicians should not be out there focusing and tinkering. If you listen to people, you would think that I should be at the airport and here and different places like that. That's not the way it works. Governments deal with setting policy. We've laid out an election manifesto, and it is our job to ensure that we formulate the laws and implement the policies that will better people's lives. It is not about the technical work. We have an entire public officers, civil service, whose focus is to implement what is proposed and enacted by the government of the day. We are going through a process of public service reform, which has started in 2017, which we're seeing enhanced development, enhanced training, offering opportunities for civil servants, focusing on the retention of civil servants, because we have an issue. We have some really bright young people in the public service where we are not giving enough opportunities for to advance, to show their skills. And that's a challenge. So those are the things which we're working through. But I think that it's critical to know, understand, and recognize that the purpose and the function of politicians is not implementation. It is setting policy that is being implemented by a professional public service.
Okay. Look, there's obviously the elephant in the room is everything that's happening with the variant, the Delta variant. We have vaccinated versus unvaccinated. We have job losses. We have businesses closing. It's a mess right now, and no fault of your own, the pandemic itself. But do you think, when you look at what's happening in Bermuda as far as the pandemic, as far as the vaccination, do you think there's something that you could have done differently?
Hindsight's 2020. There's a lot of things that we could have done differently, and there's no question about that, Jamel. But I would look and compare where we are versus other countries right now. I mean, there were people inside the tourism industry who were upset at us for reopening the borders. And when we implemented the revised travel plans, that we kept keeping this rigorous testing regime. And I remember one particular hoteler saying, look what BVI is doing. They're only requiring 5-day antigen tests before, and they're not testing people all these days and all the rest. And now look at the British Virgin Islands. They are in a full curfew. They have a full outbreak where they were in no state there before they opened their borders for tourism. We learn from experience, Jamel, and that's important. We learn from experience. We had 3 outbreaks, and when we said, you know what, this one is going to be the last one. And that's where focus, because the country cannot move beyond the pandemic if we're spending all of our time trying to battle a virus that is smarter than most of us. That's the fact. So yes, there will come a point in time where we're going to have to learn to live with the virus, as it says. And yes, there will come a point in time when there will be, changes to what exists currently. But the government put these things in place to make sure that we can focus on the economy, focus on implementing policies, focus on dealing with the health insurance things, and not focus on managing crisis, managing pandemic, managing outbreaks. I have no desire whatsoever to send children home from school again. Say you can't go to camp, say you can't go to work, say you can't do any of that stuff. Businesses are closing, yes, because the restrictions which were meant to be put in place. Now there are virtually no restrictions in the country except for wear a mask indoors. And if you're having a large event, let us know so we can make sure that you're taking the proper precautions for that large event. That's it. There is no different treatment domestically for persons who may have chosen to get vaccinated or not. The place where there's different treatment is at the border, which is the place of risk. And we believe that we have put in place risk-based policies that strike the right balance. Are they popular? No. Nothing that we've done in this pandemic, I believe, has been popular amongst every single person. Nothing will have 100% support, but we have to look at what we have and we have to balance that. And I'm coming from the perspective, just like where we laid out in the national address, that I want to move beyond the pandemic. So we are not telling people they can't go to work. so we are not telling children they cannot go to school, and so that we can have a fighting chance. Bermuda's doing better than a lot of places, but I don't want Bermuda to be doing better than just a lot of places. I want Bermudians to be doing well.
So you've said publicly previously that if someone in your cabinet doesn't agree, then they can resign. Am I misquoting you, or can we agree you said something similar to that?
I'm not certainly sure where you can't get that from, but there's collective responsibility. So collective responsibility is that the decisions of the government are the decisions of the government, and that's a long-handled principle.
Okay, so that said, so I know it's been chatter that some of your backbench is not pleased with how you've handled the paid quarantine and the proposed union decertification process. So much so that some have questioned your future as leader and premier. What are your plans for winning back the support from the backbench? What are your plans for winning the support of the electorate? Because, Dr. Ewart Brown, I quoted all the time when he was on last year, he said, politics is not about everyone agreeing with you. Like, even if 51% agree with you, that's the majority, right? So I completely understand when you say not everyone's going to agree with you or support your decisions. But it can be argued that what you're doing right now is almost as unpopular. And let me rephrase, not what you're doing, how it's coming across, right, is almost as unpopular as the Uyghur situation. And the question is, how are you planning to address these, what I feel are valid concerns, not only by people who supported you politically, but people who worked with you in the backbench and even some of your ministers? Because let's be honest, they're humans, and some people are not going to tell you how they feel in front of you, but they'll tell others, and it'll get back to people like us. And so, what are you going to do to rebuild that support?
Jamel, I would put it this way. I'm not sure it's a question of rebuilding support. I think that it's a question of recognizing that this job is difficult, and difficult decisions will always have to be made. We have to, myself, and this is the thing in which I've always said, and when I'm here at the residence and with my wife, I say that I have to make sure that I sleep well at night, making the right decisions. It will be easy to make politically expedient decisions in many cases and instances, but those are not the right decisions. And I'm blessed to have a cabinet and a backbench that will be honest and will share their views and opinions. You don't have to say that there's members of my party that don't support the quarantine policy. They've made that clear in public. And that is fine. That is a sign of a healthy democracy. And so there will maybe adjustments, as I've said, going forward, but we have to wait for the results of the court case. But what I think is the most important thing is that, as all persons have said, is that politicians want to be honest and forthright. I believe that the policy which we've laid out is the best policy that gives the country the best chance of success of moving beyond the pandemic with our individual circumstances. There are others who do not believe that is the case. We will take those things on board and we will adjust as necessary. We've had a number of months experience in this already, and there's adjustments that can be made. But unfortunately, we are not going to be able to be in a position to make any adjustments before the court judgment, because that would be making a mockery of the process. So on the issues of whether it's, as you mentioned, decertification, et cetera, the Minister of Labor was very clear. And we have set out our principal decision. We will continue to work with our unions, but we have a principal decision. And oftentimes, people will take a different view. But that does not mean that you cannot work together in the interest of the overall population. And that's where we're continuing to be focused.
All righty. Kayla, you had a question?
I just had a quick one. So you said that now is not the time to be focused on living with COVID, right? I just want to make sure I'm getting that right.
I don't think I said that. I said that there will come a time when that will be.
There will come a time when that's what we need to focus on. Why is now not that time? Because we keep saying Bermuda is open, we need to open up, but then we have all these. Go ahead.
What, Michaela, what's closed?
What's closed? So I have a lot of people who I know who would love to come here but won't, because of our very strict testing protocols, for instance. So how can we be wide open when tourists have to stand in line for hours in the hot sun to get tested?
I'm happy you spoke about standing in the hot sun at testing, because next week for our hotel visitors, we'll be rolling out testing, day 4 testing, day 8 testing, day 14 testing inside of their properties. so they don't have to disturb their vacation and, as you say, go stand in the hot sun. Though that testing process is efficient, but when we say about living with the coronavirus, I think it's a question of how do you continue to adjust. But we're not going to reduce our restrictions to the border, Michaela, because that would be suicide. That's what has caused other countries to have to slide back, and we're not doing that. And so we had to withstand pressure as a government from the hotels, from the tourism industries, all the rest. But at the same point in time, you say that, Michaela, there are people who will gladly travel to a place where they know that they can be safe. So when you said, we have to open up, I asked what's closed. The only restrictions that we have here locally that are related to the pandemic are the requirements to wear masks indoors. And if you are having a large event, to let us know so we can make sure that you are following the correct and proper protocols for large events. That's it.
Mr. Premier, before we let you go, Alrita Wade has a question. Why can't the quarantine be on a case-by-case basis? Some people can safely quarantine at home, but are being forced to pay hotel rates, mortgage, or rent while their residences sit empty.
I will accept the comments when this policy was rolled out in, I want to say, April, when it was announced. We were at a lower vaccination rate now than we were. There was not a question. There was uncertainty as what rates we would actually be able to reach, whether or not we were able to reach our targets. And as I have said privately and in press conferences, as we continue to move forward, there will certainly be spaces for adjustments to be made. But the government will be making no announcements on any adjustments until the ruling inside the court cases is made.
All righty. And last but not least, Mr. Premier, obviously there's a court case going on, and probably can't speak on that. There are people who are challenging what the government is enforcing right now. How can Bermuda, obviously post-pandemic, how can we get through this collectively and say there are better days ahead, where there are jobs coming, there's entrepreneurship opportunities? What do you believe you can do immediately to regain the confidence, not for political purposes, but for the betterment of the community?
Jamel, I'm not going to say that I live in a bubble, because I see and I feel it, but on a daily basis, I also see the success stories that are happening every single day inside of this country. The work of which we are doing insofar as training, retraining, support of entrepreneurs, the BDC, all the funds that are being given, the direct things. I'm going to be speaking in Parliament about that in about an hour, as I realize we're a little bit over time. So I'm heading to my office, going to be speaking in Parliament in an hour about the work of which we're doing to support entrepreneurs, about the new companies that are coming, about the expansion of international business, about the work of which we're doing in infrastructure. The fact is that there are better days ahead. I recognize that people are upset about certain things. But what is also important to recognize, Jamel, is that a lot of these things are not done from a pure basis. These are political. And someone said, how do you feel about people, out on the lawn, all the rest? My answer was, I do not expect people who did not support me before the election, who ran against my party before the election, to support me after the election. And that's a fact. So we have to call some of it for what it is, political. Some of it is persons who genuinely feel that this is, I don't want to be pejorative, but that there is, the vaccinations are for depopulation of the planet. That's just what people feel. But I'm not going to get stuck in that. Mm-hmm. All we can do is focus on our economic recovery plan, focus on the things and the promises which we made towards the electorate, and execute on those. Because at the end of the day, that is where the public will judge us. Whether or not we kept our promise to the electorate, whether or not the things which we said we were going to do, we will do.
All right, one last question. We have to wrap it up, obviously, but
well over time, but go ahead.
There's been a lot said about the way that you and the government have conducted the media. Hopefully you go back and watch. I encourage everyone who works with this show to go back and watch the show so that we can be better and improve for the audience. Mm-hmm. Do you not think that it comes across extremely bad how you engage with the media? And I'm going to ask because Owen Johnston Barnes, I believe his name, made a statement on behalf of the Royal Gazette the other day, and Trevor has made it as well. Can the government not find a way to engage in a more respectful and better manner with the media during these press conferences? Because believe it or not, the media are not there for themselves. When you look, I'm sure you look out there and you see how many people are tuned into these press conferences. They are there on behalf of the public. Can you find it, you and your government, in a manner? Because I think what's happened is the tables have turned. What I mean by that, last year this time, everyone was annoyed with the media and they were behind you. This year, they're annoyed with you and happy with the media. Last year, you had the former Minister Wayne Keynes and Kim Wilson, Minister of Health, like making snarky remarks under their breath, right? This year, it's the media doing it. You have to bridge that gap, because the one thing no government wants to do is be in a war with the media. Believe it or not, both parties need one another. Can we address that? Can we massage that relationship moving forward? Final question.
I'll just put it this way. I think it'll be a difficult relationship to massage, but I'm sure that we'll find another way to get the information the public wants. And I don't actually happen to believe that the press conference is the most effective way of doing that. They're supposed to be focused on the coronavirus and dealing with issues related to the coronavirus. And I think that if the public and the media want to have answers on the coronavirus, we'll find a way to do it in a more effective manner. And so we'll look at that and we'll see what happens. Because I mean, in 2 weeks' time, I will not be here. The Minister of Health will be taking well-deserved vacation. And so we just will have to figure out how those things get delivered. But I can accept the point. Right. My job is not to try to restrict questions. People want to make sure those questions answered. And I mean, we have an entire department of communications, of which persons here would certainly be familiar with, who literally spend all their time researching questions for the media to try to get the information as much as possible. But I will accept the press conferences are not the best. In my view, I think that in some cases and instances they become a joke and people tune into them for laughs and other things. So there's certainly a way to figure out a way to be more effective, and I'm not entirely certain that that will be, press conferences or other things. We might find a way to do a technical briefing with technical officers, so all the coronavirus questions can be answered, so people can find out as much as they want to find out about the coronavirus.
All right, David Burt, Premier of Bermuda, thank you so much for having this conversation with us. And please know that the door is always open should you or any of your other ministers who don't seem as media friendly want to come on and have a conversation with the audience as well. Good luck in the house today. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice day.
Thank you.
So what's that?
No.
Don't do that. Goodbye. Thanks again to the Premier. Michaela, any final thoughts before we head out?
Have a good weekend, guys. That's really all I have to say right now.
Yeah. On that note, honestly, it's been a long show. Thanks again to Medical House One Communications, Lindos, everyone who continues to support this show. The audience, thank you for engaging. Thank you for getting onto YouTube and engaging with us. I done as best as I could with the questions to get as many of you in. Look, if you haven't already, make sure you engage with us. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. And I look. We appreciate you, we love you, and we thank you for making us part of your routine. If all goes well, we'll be back to do this again with you next week, Monday. Another big lineup as we head closer to Cup Match. She's Michaela Ian. There was also Sherry Vanderpool. I'm Jamel Hartman. My friends, make it a great and safe weekend. And all I can say is we love you. We love you. We love you. Make sure you give a thumbs up on the YouTube video. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And please feel free to comment. Let us know what your thoughts were. And you can engage with us on social media throughout the day. Michaela, any daily inspiration before we head out?
Oh, I do. Yes, I do.
We need that. Trust me.
Please, where is it? Okay. Best views always come after the hardest climbs.
I like that one.
I think it's a good one to go out on.
It is. Folks, thanks so much. Don't forget, tune in all weekend for giveaways. We're out. Make it a great, safe one.
Bye.